All right, we're going to look at statistics part 1. Again, before you actually start working on looking at this play posit, please make sure that you actually try all parts of this activity first. And so when we start off, the first question says, what do you believe statistics means and why should we study statistics? That's you. So please make sure that you did fill that part out. And then I have another definition here. It says statistics is a branch of mathematics that involves collecting and analyzing data in order to interpret the results and make inferences based on that data. We'll gather our own data from all of your classmates to use in our discussions from the Google form that was previously sent out. So I sent that out already. So I got a few responses, not as many as I had hoped for, but we did get some responses. So we're going to choose a couple of those data sets to investigate. And we're also thinking about which of the questions on that Google form do you think has data values that are categorical and which ones are quantitative. So let's take a look at some of those results. So I made some pie charts. Actually, Google Forms made it for me. But this was one of them that we had. And the question was, how far do you live from Chaffey College? And you can see that we only got 18 responses. So this is a small sample of our class, but still it's a sample of our class. And it looks like, just looking at the picture, that we have about 55.6% living in this region, which means 5 to 10 miles from Chaffey College. And I don't see any blue on there, so there's no one that was surveyed that is less than a mile, between 0 and 1 mile. And the next one I'm looking at is how many hours of sleep did you get last night? So very proud of you guys getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, 50% of those that were surveyed. That's pretty good there. And again, what we're getting for both of these, it's a range of hours or a range of miles, but they're quantities that you guys are giving me. When we cruise over to this question, it says, what is your favorite type of music? So I have a couple things to say with this one. Notice our answers. These are not quantities. These would be categories. So they're categories of music. And I had a small set for you to choose from, and then there was a chance for you to enter what you'd like, and there was a huge variety you can see. So our pie chart is not very informative here because there was such a big variety of different types of music that everyone liked. So it's not the best way to represent our data. Sometimes there's better ways, and if we look at this question here, we still had answers to the survey question, which were numbers. So again, that's a quantity. But here it's represented in the form of a bar graph. So you can see that there's vertical bars compared to the pies, the circles that we were just looking at. And our trend is living on this side of happiness. So the way that it worked was 0 was extremely unhappy, 10 was very happy. Or extremely happy. And so we have a lot of people living on this right side, which later we're going to learn this actually means our data set is skewed to the left. So when we look at the whole piece here, like there's like nothing, and then there's our data set. And you might think skewed left, it's just that we don't have much on the left side. That's that skewed part, it's skewed left. So is hanging out over here on the right side. And we'll see that word a little bit more as we keep exploring statistics. So going back to where we were here, that categorical, we could think about that question about the type of music because your answers will be in categories versus quantitative. When we say like how many hours of sleep, that would be getting a response that was some sort of quantity, a number. Now, I mentioned the word sample because I surveyed our entire class. I was trying to find out what our whole class was interested in, what types of music, how much sleep, and their happiness. Now, I only got back 18 people. So I got a sample of what was supposed to be the whole class. So the sample was those that filled out the survey. And so I'm taking that as representative of our whole class for our activities that we're going to be seeing. And so the population for this was supposed to be our whole Math 45 class. Okay, but and it often happens, we would prefer to survey all the members of our population. It's not always practical, so I wasn't able to like force you guys all to take the survey. But we just have the sample to work with. What do you think are some criteria that have to be satisfied to make a sample that is representative of the population? So there's lots of different things that you could possibly write here. I was thinking that one of the big things would have to be some randomness. So some way to employ randomness. Just to ensure that it is representative of the whole population, you have to be a little careful. So when we talk about those that actually did complete the Google form that I had sent out, there's a little bit of trouble with that because we have a little bit of bias there. And that's because you guys were voluntarily filling it out. So we say that it's voluntary sampling. Because you weren't forced to, you were asked to, you were volunteering. So those that actually did complete the survey, maybe you had the time, maybe you saw the announcement, whatever, but you voluntarily took the survey. You weren't required to, it wasn't part of your grade or anything, so that might affect our sampling, or the bias, really, of the sample that was chosen. And so it did employ a little bit of that randomness, but it was also a voluntary sample, so that could affect the results. When we look at exercise 1 here, it says, below are some examples of populations. Determine whether choosing students in our class, so our class, our Math 45 class, and I'm trying to be specific here to think about the characteristics of our class. So when we think about the students in our class, they are taking Math 45, which is a non-STEM math course. You guys are students at Chaffey College in Southern California. It's a community college. So already just by knowing that we are looking at this particular class, we need to see if it could actually represent the populations below. So if we're looking at all people in America, do you think that that is a good, if that's our population, do you think that our class would be a good sample? And I'd have to say no. It wouldn't be a good sample because it's very specific to Southern California. It's not all the people in America. You would want to get people distributed throughout America. The next one I'm looking at is all registered voters in California. So if we look at our class, the only way, it could be a good sample, but I'm thinking that, well, what if not everyone is a registered voter? Which you should be. Go register to vote. But when you're looking at all registered voters in California, a sample would have to be registered voters. And so right now, just like looking at our class, there's no guarantee of that happening. Also, you might even consider the age of the average college student. Now, community college has a little bit different ages, but something else to consider if you're trying to take a sample of all the registered voters in California. We're getting closer because we're in California, but it would probably not be a good sample. Next, thinking about all legal drivers. Again, this is kind of similar to all registered voters. You would need to guarantee that everyone in our class was a legal driver. So I don't think that we would necessarily be the best sample if we were all legal drivers. Again, we might have that consideration of age within our classes, like newer drivers and older drivers, because if you're talking about all legal drivers, you would want a good mix of all different ages, all different parts. It doesn't say all legal drivers in America. So if it's all legal drivers in the world, we might have to be spread out throughout the world. Next, if we look at just all. So if our population is all people in the whole entire world, our little class would not be a good sample of that because of all of these specifications for who is in our class. Now, all students at Chaffey College. Again, it's a small class from our overall Chaffey College, so I feel like we're getting warmer and warmer. But again, we are a very specific course for non-STEM math, so you're not really going to be covering all students at Chaffey College because you're not going to have those STEM students. The last one we have, all Instagram users. Again, Instagram is throughout the world, so we're just a small Math 45 class here in Southern California, so it would not be the best sample. Now, it does suggest or say if it's not, then what sample would be chosen to make that sample representative. So I think we've kind of stated that already. So like all people in America, it would have to have a sample of people from all countries. At the very least, someone from every country. Legal drivers, you'd want to make sure that your sample was made up of legal drivers, and various ages and experience. I guess that's what I mean by age, is more your experience driving. All students at Chaffey, that would be nice if we had a student from every class or from every major, from every ACC, which is our academic and career communities, or major. It has to be something like spread out. Again, you might want to look at age, ethnicity, gender, all of those things to make sure that your sample is spread out and representative of all students at Chaffey College. You can't just focus in on one small class because that's not adequate at showing a good representation of the whole Chaffey College. All Instagram users, you'd have to be an Instagram user. And again, it would have to be a variety of users, like the diverseness. All registered voters in California, again, that one should be, they should for sure be registered voters in California. So, I mean, that's the start, right? If you're going to represent registered voters in California, it needs to start by having a sample that is that group, and then you can get, of course, smaller from there. That's what we mean by a sample. And it would need to reach a variety of people there. And randomness in that. So if we're just choosing from our particular class, that is not very, have much randomness in it. And then all, that is a huge group. I'm not sure exactly what we want to say by all the people in the whole entire world. Our sample would have to be very diverse as well, and something throughout the world. So it's almost like looking at the all people in America, but we're opening that up to the world. So we want all countries around the world. I guess earlier when I said America, I'm thinking of all the states, all the countries that make up America. Not just the United States. I was thinking North America, South America, the Americas. So however you're thinking about that, your answer might be slightly different. For exercise 2, we want to think about, okay, we thought about samples, and so how can we make sure that our survey is good, that the statistics that we are getting are not messed up because of various biases. And so there's a whole bunch of different biases that you have read about so far. And what we're going to do for this activity is try and see if we can determine what type of bias is happening with each of these situations. So the first one here, it says that a personality test is taken for a customer service job during recruitment that asks, do you like meeting new people? And for that one, the question is just, do you like meeting new people? And really, I'd say that that would be a response bias, because the responder might give an inaccurate response because they know that the job's for customer service, so they're assuming that the person that is doing the recruitment wants someone that is good with customer service. So they will probably give an inaccurate response to it. So we would say that's response bias. For question 2, a radio station asks listeners to phone in their choice in a daily poll. So this is kind of similar to how I asked you to fill out a survey. It's a voluntary thing. So anytime that that's happening, you can have a voluntary response bias. And that's again because I asked for volunteers. For question number 3, we have a substitute teacher who wants to know how students in the class did on the last test. The teacher asked the 10 students sitting in the front row. So it did pick a sample from the class, but picking those students that sit in the front is a particular type of student. Not everyone wants to sit in the front, so it would have been better to select from throughout the class, not just the front row. So that would be a sampling bias. So it's not representative of the population. For number 4, high school students are asked if they have consumed alcohol in the last 2 weeks. So for that one of the main things that pops out to me would be the perceived lack of anonymity, because the responder fears giving an honest answer because it will negatively affect them. High schoolers are under 18 and under. So in our country, you have to be 21 in order to drink alcohol. So you can see that there might be some fear in giving that honest answer. So that would be a perceived lack of anonymity. For number 5, the Beef Council releases a study stating that consuming red meat poses little cardiovascular risk. So the Beef Council themselves is doing a survey about red meat. That would be a little bit of some bias going on there because the researchers have an interest in that outcome, for sure. They want their product to not have a big cardiovascular risk because then other people will not eat beef. So that one will for sure be a self-interest study. And the last one, a poll asked, do you support a new transportation tax or would you prefer to see our public transportation system fall apart? Now, that's going to be for sure a loaded question. And that's because, why would you want to answer that supporting that tax? A lot of people don't want the taxes to happen because that means that you're paying more money, but then you might look like a not nice person because it's saying that the transportation system will fall apart. And so that wording is influencing the response.